And I am back. It is Friday, the 22nd of May, 9 p.m. here on the eastern coast of the U.S. And I'm coming tonight completely unscripted. And I guess why I don't have too much script going on tonight. Tonight, what I will talk about, I guess, is learning. And mostly because I am quite learning obsessive. And I am always trying to stay up on the latest trends of what is new, what is able to be created, and new possibilities. I guess this is mainly fueled by ultra curiosity, but learning is super important in life. If it's something that we turn off and we just cruise control on, just thinking we're going to get by on what we did learn and not learning, it becomes a if you don't use it, you lose it scenario. And I don't want to do that because, I'm in my mid 40s. You go back 20 years ago, these technologies weren't even a possibility, let alone here to learn. And for those that are sitting at home and learning and digging in night after night, it's really going to add up to be some really what is I consider magical superpowers almost with all this tech and what it's doing. And yeah, I really just keep showing up every day, practicing more and more. Yeah, I'm thinking now a little bit what I heard a bit ago was about. I was listening to Alex Hormozy on a podcast. I believe it was Modern Wisdom, and he was talking about learning and the Skool community that we're in. And I had a little bit of mixed reservations about that, to be honest with you. And this is maybe hopefully gets back to some of the Skool community. And really, I think the Skool developers and all about learning is that I heard Alex on that podcast in particular, Modern Wisdom, talk about his belief in how community is going to be the that's where he's putting his money on and betting on. And he says he's, like everything. He's not saying that he's right, but that's just where he's putting his money on is he's betting in uh in Skool platform. And I in particular have been in the Skool platform consistently. I want to say maybe September, October timeframe. But one thing I thought that was interesting that he had mentioned in that podcast was how he emphasized the importance of community as being what's going to win out in these new ages. And I have to fully agree with that. I really believe that with community we're going to have some amazing possibilities. And what can be built from these things is going to be quite immense in there. And I guess where I had my reservations of what he was saying in a lot of senses was how he had talked about school games and how he's getting all these competitions going in school where if you're unfamiliar, it's essentially where you're competing for what is essentially money and in its particular genre that you're in. And you got, they go by what's called MRR, monthly reoccurring revenue in there and stuff. And then I started thinking a bit about, this is a little bit of a like a weird approach. If you got people that are emphasizing community on one side, and that's the whole point of the platform, yet you're focusing on the competition sides of this, then are you really putting the people before the profits in the school? And I have a bit of a belief that school platform is starting to put a little bit too much emphasis on the money sides of things. Maybe kind of attract or bring people in from platforms that they're already monetized, and then kind of highlighting it as hey, look, they want to do this on our platform now. That could be all well and good, and more power to them. But I believe that they're also kind of at the same time somewhat shooting themselves in the foot in terms of trying to develop the community aspect of what I think in a large sense of things is really the right principle in this. And so, yeah, I don't know how I got off on that tangent. I didn't really think that I was going to be getting on here blasting the school platform right on the get-go. But yeah, I really think that they're kind of mixing up the priorities and such, to where it's weird. It's almost coming like real school was, in the senses where you got the cool kids and the kids that kind of sit off by themselves in the lunchroom and kind of just watch what's going on around them. But whatever, it's their platform. They can do whatever they want. I don't really mind that. And because to be honest with you, at the same time, at the end of December, um, there was another platform that I follow almost religiously, is the great Andy Frisella, and I always listen to Real AF. I really look forward to Mondays in particular, where it's essentially this. It's a Q&A for what they call Q&AF, and this is essentially where I learn the most in that. And following, I want to say late December or whatever, they had released an app called Operator Standard, and that has actually been quite an amazing platform so far, as for what I like in particular. And because like I said, this is agency, and I really am trying to work myself towards higher levels of agency, and kind of broadcasting that, and kind of being the example that I feel I would want for my future self and my family. So yeah, the operator standard in there has um, a new element that is called communities in there as well. And what I really like about that platform is it's seemingly more um, suited towards the elements of working hard and working diligently towards where you're going with your goals. And I tend to believe, rather than you get the whole rainbow, or it's got and it's split into categories, like I was just saying, school, and tends to be that this is more of everybody's a little bit on the same page. They kind of get it, And as the days go on, little by little, I actually find myself enjoying that quite a bit more. And uh, yeah, in fact, I'm over there as well in the operator standard. I just really joined the couple communities of the new section in communities that have released there, mostly in particular around the startup and the entrepreneurial sides of things, especially as I get launched with agency here. And so, yeah, it's just about learning in terms of that. And so this one, in fact, I'll check over our Skool right now. Yeah, it's just going to be me live streaming here tonight. And then, yeah, like I said, to start it off, it's all about learning. And in fact, that's one of the things I really took to heart in one podcast I seen Alex Hormozy on, because I actually think Andy Frisella and Alex Hormozy are quite good friends in terms of they're just really um, high level agency individuals. So there's really a lot to look up to and learn from them, because they're not really just up there preaching about it. They're doing it. They got the results to back it up. And um, my own definition of learning tends to be um, realizing where I am not maybe making the best decisions or applying the best applications, and kind of looking around and sensing whether it's internet or individuals that I'm working in and around or collaborating with, and seeing what they do, how they do it, what they what they're better at. And essentially, I kind of first came onto this principle when I went in and read The Richest Man in Babylon, where in that book, which is really one of the best books for in my opinion, is learning how to generally just invest. And in that book they tell the story of how uh, I can't remember the character's name, but they learned the lesson that they had to essentially um, what is it, enslave essentially their no less than 10% of what they earn, and then put it to work for them. And then in the book, the guy goes out with the interest in selling diamonds. He goes and buys a whole bunch of them, learns that they're cubic zirconias and or fake diamonds, and then ends up losing his money, and then resurfaces to the person who gave the lesson that said that and walked away with the learning lesson of which is, if you are not an expert in something, then you need to pay the fees of who is the expert. So that was very profound in my individual learnings of essentially just money in general, but I applied it across the spectrum in learning and overall. And yeah, so and I've even heard Alex Hormozy over the times, because I really believe that he's a top operator when it comes to business. That yeah, it's learning essentially is a process of stopping what you know you're doing wrong, and the measure of intelligence is stopping what you know is doing wrong and applying what you know is right. And those who are the quickest of applying the differences towards what is working is the measure of intelligence. So that also was quite profound in me. And I also believe I heard him say in a podcast as well that, it's a learning is essentially um, the same conditions with new variables. So you just got to learn to apply the new variables to the conditions that you're in or repeat or find yourself in, and seeing what works, what doesn't, and keep tinkering. But the goal is to learn, get better. And uh, another person I really find highly respectable in their opinion is their in particular in their communications and how they express just their philosophy so easily is Naval. I don't want to butcher his last name. Ravikant. I can't. I'm not quite sure, but he's the CEO and founder of AngelList or Angie's List. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, even a great book about it, or I don't know if there's a book or what, but it's called the Navalmanac, or I believe someone else wrote. And but in terms of learning, I actually heard him recently talking about how learning is a system of error correction, and that was very poignant to hear that and how he said that. So because that's really kind of what my process is in general. And yeah, he also compared that to Malcolm Gladwell's in his book Outliers, how Malcolm Gladwell professes that it's 10,000 hours spent doing something makes you an expert in it, and Naval and reformulating that process to being 10,000 iterations of something makes you an expert in it. And I kind of would buy more into that formula than anything else. And yeah, with that, um, yeah, that brings me into agency, of which I have a lot of new ideas with this whole agency platform that I'm building. Because first and foremost, the agency in general is about, for myself, this is kind of a project that I want to take on for the better of my future self and my family and my growing family, because I want to be the example that can be, for the kids to learn. And I don't believe that freedom is free. I believe we have a duty and a civil obligation to kind of do the best that we can in life, and that's where we have this. If I didn't believe such a need and a calling to be serving in agency and for the missions in general, I would be off setting up a wellness firm for to help people get off of all these food systems and synthetic medicines, which are just wreaking havoc on our society as a whole. But at the same time, I also see a sense of importance to address the AI in general, as this is a major source of pivoting changes that I think are going to come. I just believe the changes that are coming are just going to be so massive, and in a lot of senses, we're not going to understand the world that we're living in. And so, like any life form, if life that adapts and into all changes, that's the life forms that go on. If you decide to just become complacent and stay where you're at, brace up for a rough ride, because it's going to be almost so quick to change everything that the human condition already isn't suited for how fast changes have gone just with this information and social media age that we're living in. And the pace of these changes are going to be just getting ever more rapidly changing. And yeah, I believe firmly that in the times past where you would have quite a bit of time where you're able to adapt and kind of settle in and get warm and cozied up to the changes of what technology offers. Time's really compressing, so now it's a situation where you're either early or late. There's really no there's no time to get comfortable anymore if you're not adapted for change and trying to and pattern recognize your way through things on how to best adapt. It's just going to leave um, a lot more chaos. And yeah, just like anything in life, if things get chaotic and you can't really control the emotions of things, it's hard to stay logically calm and sift through and be able to maneuver through a lot of changes. But I would say the biggest magnetic force in what is pulling me into the whole agency platform is decentralization would be the best word overall that is going to sum this up. And we don't really have too many decentralized systems in life that or society that we are grown used to. Um, I would say that the best example of a decentralized system would be um, the American experiment. And here coming out on about 250 years, this is a small group, and honestly, a young, maybe in their early 20s, a young group of young men wanted to, and women, they wanted to break off from the monarchy and paying taxes from to a monarchy that is going to dictate to them what they need to pay. And 250 years later, it's clearly has left its mark on the history of Earth in there, because they're now in a system where in 250 years, I mean, you could almost add up all the empires of past in history, whether it's you know the the Mongols or Greeks or Roman empires, the British empires. You can add them all up together, and they're still not under any near as significance as the American empire has come to be in the 250 years that have formed in its history. And it comes because of taking ownership and agency over the desire to have freedom and what is a decentralized structure from a leader of maybe one or a small handful of people. And yeah, it's called the wisdom of the crowds. And there's lots of statistics that already show that, whether it's mine or your inputs on things, if you add them all up on an individual scale, they're all wrong. And there may be elements of things that are right, but maybe it's not right to the masses and the overall. So, but there's this weird aspect of if of the wisdom of the crowd, where if you were to like add it all up and average it out among the masses of those um, who are participating in the likely outcomes of whatever it is. In America's case, fighting for freedom from a monarchy, then you start to see that there's nothing that a few select people can do. You end up in a situation where the people overall get to say, and Yeah, there's a lot of beauty in that because if you kind of step back off of the high horse on what you want, we all have biases, and I do as well on things, but I'm also realize that when it comes to voting or giving my opinions in the systems of governance over things, that I'm not, when I'm voting, yes, I'm voting for what I want, but deep down overall, I'm not going to get pissed off or start to throw a fit if it doesn't end up going the way that I want, because in the end, the whole point of of a decentralized civil society is that what the masses want collectively end up becoming the desired outcome of this. Because somehow, with the wisdom of the crowd, you're going to add it all up and average it out, and then that's going to be the right answer. It might not be what you want or what I want in any particular case, but we can trust that when it's decentralized and it's for the masses, that that's what's going to win out. And 250 years later into this experiment of a country, there again, just like you add all up the empires in history, if you were to add up all the militaries around the globe, it's still not going to equate to what the American military is. And when you have aspects like that, you end up in a situation where you can't beat a country where you got maybe 250 million guns held by the citizens, and then you got the largest military, bar none, maybe in capabilities as well as just overall mass of force, that you can't really attack the US in there. And when that becomes a reality, it also becomes the outcome and reality that the only way that you can successfully get in and break it apart is through ingressing it and getting inside of it and withering it from the inside out. So, because the outside forces are not going to be able to crack it, so the only way to get in, and it would almost be considered like a cancer, where it's like a parasite or bacteria gets inside you, and then little by little that tumor grows and metastasizes, and next thing you know, you have stage 4 cancer. And because us as American citizens are allowing a select few that maybe are not even honoring the stars and stripes of the American flag, and maybe have the best interests of another country, or maybe it's money that they're putting ahead of themselves. But when power and authority gets centralized into the hands of a select few, they can kind of break apart all elements of the decentralized aspects of what makes the country great. That's a major problem, and people should be really not so much scared that that's the case, but they should, and myself included, you kind of have to take the blame because we allow for that to happen. And it's really at a time of crisis in such that how we handle this going forward with all these new technologies, if we allow that to get into the hands of a select few, and it can kind of just grow and metastasize like a cancer, or on the other side, let the masses kind of take it over and not really give in to the corruptions that these centralized forces and authorities would like to have over us, as they have so easily done over the what's many decades now. So I say all that to come to the overall premise of what is agency. Agency overall will end up being a decentralized system of of course it's AI technology, because anything that isn't AI native, or at least heavily leaning on AI tools, is going to really have quite significant problems keeping up. It's almost going to be a little bit of a pony express in a world of internet intelligence, trying to adapt the two together, and it's really not going to work. And I guess the best way that I can see this playing out is the fact that, first and foremost, we have to realize what is that cancer and is inside this system, and we have to disavow and disallow a lot of these uh, corrupt forces and authorities and powers from being victorious. And whether it comes by way of just simply not participating in the systems that they feel that we need to take as what is essentially like a handout, and we get the crumbs left over of what they are offering us, or we take ownership of what we want to see happen for the future of the world. And much like I explained in the beginning of this, where this I'm doing this on a personal scale for the better of my future and my family's future. We have to look at the rest of the globe coming up through this as well, in an almost similar situation. Not so much that they are our children as such, but they have even more oppressive governance and authorities over them. And have you ever heard the saying that, like, history doesn't rhyme, but it sure does, or history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme? We have to kind of look at this age that we're growing in and going in, that this is like another American Revolution, only rather than America standing up to the British Empire saying, we don't want to pay 1% more tax anymore, we have to look at this as the globe is now going to have to decide whether, and goes for each individual country on their own, and the citizens of it, but they have to decide, are we going to allow these centralized few kind of just keep eh, caving in our walls of freedom, or are we going to fight back? And you're going to see all sides of it happen, of course, but the countries now are the American revolutionaries, and the governments that prevail over those countries are essentially, symbolically, the British Empire. Um, it's going to when the wars split and they end, it's going to happen one way or the other. You're either going to have a lot of freedom and abundance that comes up throughout the world, with honestly with America kind of breeding into a bit of the patriarch or matriarch over these builds, where you're going to have complete just Marxist communism and socialist ideals just kind of cave in and slowly envelop and engulf all these citizens of these countries. And it's going to be one way or the other. There isn't going to be any more splits of one way or the other. And just because we're in America, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to be the winners of this because we are America. We have to kind of take control over the country. So people that are essentially what are revolutionaries, they need to step we need to step up. We need to fix this. This isn't because I'm starting agency entity and the builds around this as a business sense, but without freedom, none of this is going to be any bit possible. And freedom is by no means free. We can't just take the EBT handout way to get over this. And we have to take ownership of what we want to see for our futures. And at some point in time, one of these generations are going to have to essentially sacrifice some comforts and easeabilities in life for the betterment of future generations. That time is now. We can't sit around and wait anymore. And so I believe that an agency and the systems that I have kind of envisioned for this. Of course, I'm here on a Friday night ranting to this to myself, and no one is joined in, and that's okay because I really just think that we need to share this message. But when I said earlier that there's no more comfort zone, we're either early or behind. I still firmly believe that what I'm professing is I'm a little bit early on, and that's okay because the message needs to be shared. We can't be silent about this stuff anymore. And in turn of how these things will end up occurring, it's going to be my firm belief that ownership and agency and having equity in what you're working and spending all your waking hours away from your family and loved ones doing is really the only path out of this. There is no going to be, whether it's a little mom and pop shop or that does a basic service that we're all accustomed to, or whether it's a giant enterprise of 1,000 or whatever more employees involved. If it's not owned by everybody involved and the those in charge are not allowing the wisdom of the crowds to flourish and the directive of the company or entities or organization, it's going to lead to massive unrest here if it doesn't break. And I don't believe there needs to be bloodshed to have a proper revolution in the country and the world, but I do believe it's going to take quite a bit of sacrifice. Um, well, I guess you could say civil disobedience without drawing the arms or bloodshed, and it's a really important aspect that we kind of address. So I guess I'll spend the last few minutes here of this live stream explaining. I'm going to share a little bit of story about how I kind of came to the conclusion that what I'm speaking on is maybe a little bit early on, but still, I believe it's the way. And God, I want to say about good maybe 12 years ago. This has been quite a long time ago, where I attended uh, bachelor party out of town for a good friend of mine, and we went to I want to call it a sports bar. I can't. I just know it was in Fort Collins, Colorado. I can't remember the name of it. More likely a brewery. They had this really cool. I would say German game. It was almost like bowling, but it had like an arch in it. But that's really besides the point. But it's just a common brewery that you find a lot of families in Fort Collins area, which is very beautiful area. So I just remember being completely blown away by the level of customer service that the wait staff was offering there. And it was one person in particular that it really it felt like we were staying in the Ritz Carlton, and they were just rolling out a red carpet for us, just impeccable customer service. And to the degree I just felt compelled at some point in time to it, I just had to ask. I said, please, I got to know, like, where did you develop these customer service skills, and how are you so good at your job that you have us feeling this way? And the answer was very quick and abrupt. Oh, that's easy. That's easy. I own the place. And I was just like, go figure. Yeah, of course. If you own the place and here you are, serving away, and you got a packed place, you're kind of like thinking, "Woo, we're in the money." And and that was my response. I was just like, "Oh, okay, that figures. That makes sense. If you own it, of course you're going to feel that way." And then in seeing that I was responding, thinking that she was the sole proprietor of that place, she ended up saying like, "No, no, 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 no. We all own it." And I was so taken back by that. I was just like, "What? What? Explain this." And she had ended up telling me that what they do is they take people in on standard employment for a 1 year trial. And then at the end of that 1 year, the ownership group voted that person in the ownership group or out if they didn't see them as fit. And that's all that was said about it on her end. But I, I was just having such a light bulb moment where I was just like, oh my god, this is the answer. This is probably the only way out on this to get people excited about their work. And so, like I'd mentioned, this was 12 years ago. So going in the years in between, probably then and the last 2 3 years, I want to say. Of course, I didn't really know AI was coming to so quickly and to the extent of change and that it has put on us. But I still had made it a common experiment to go around and say and ask people just a little bit of a thought experiment stuff like, hey, just if what is your biggest concern? And I'm asking the just the general comments on this. Maybe people want to chime in and leave a kind of their inputs on this and too. But the general question I would pose on people is, if AI or robots, I would say commonly before AI, were to take your job, what is your biggest worry in that? Um, I was kind of taken back to a very large degree to how the default answer on this ended up being almost all the time a focus on the money in there, because people go to work for money and to pay their bills and raise their family and such. And especially in America, where the common saying is we live to work, where around the rest of the globe they're working to live. And yeah, Americans are the worker bee of the world. And as I would reflect over the incredible statistics of how everybody defaulted to the thinking of the money on things, I started to kind of really dig in and learn and research about the general psychology of human behaviors in the workplace, and really started to learn that money is actually quite a bit distant second to what we really get up every day and work towards. And I was even shocked to some degree to learn that this is the truth of it. But to be honest with you, it's hard to refute the evidence of such, in that what really people are getting up each day and putting all their efforts in and working towards is essentially to be part of something bigger than themselves, and to feel like they're a contributing member to a an ecosystem or a mission that is bigger than themselves. Um, I really have to believe that that is true. There's really no other way for me to think that. Of course, we need money to, um, to get by and to kind of survive and thrive in life, and especially in American society. But um, how many times do you find that you get one person that maybe made I don't know, 9, 10 figures or billionaire status, and they're completely miserable in life. And that's because it's if you make money your sole mission in life, yes, you might get a boat or a fancy car, or be able to get a little bit of luxuries or social energy of which money provides. But money isn't everything. It's not. But on I guess it's just a psychological premise of things, I end up noticing as well that those that are serving themselves above uh, serving others, and a faith or a mission that is greater than themselves, then the focus ends up becoming back on them. And by default, you're always looking to fill voids, and you can just insert any number of voids that need fixing in their life in there. And so maybe that does it for some people, but the majority of people that I see living a more fulfilled life and a lot more of the overall successes of life end up being, by pretty much a statistical sense, that these people are serving others above themselves. And so that kind of feeds back to the whole ethos of having equity in what you're working towards, and wanting to be in a system that's greater and with a higher purpose of what they have aligned for their own senses of things. Um, that is kind of full circle at the story that has kind of made me realize that I don't want to own a company. I want to be part of a mission just like I explained over the last few minutes. And I want those that are building within and for the greater goods of the whole within the systems to be fully equitable members of whatever is being built. I want them to have voting powers within what's being built. And I really feel that this is the maybe not only way out, but this is starting to show to become one of the only ways out. And I'm not saying give me ownership or equity in your company, but I do hope that these kinds of words and uh, philosophy can encourage you to think that if you are running a company and such, that we start to think about how we can democratize and decentralize a lot of elements within business that are going to allow people to feel like they have more ownership and actually distribute actual ownership and equity back into the peoples that are running this. Because first and foremost, I really believe that money isn't even going to stay much of the same of what we know and recognize it to be here in the near future, especially as you have a lot of the agentic systems in AI that are you know, do you really think that they're going to, the AI is going to take $20 bills and send it through the Swift networks over to another AI agent to transact? It just money just doesn't really work on the principles of how we even understand all this. And um, so I believe no coincidence that you see a lot of these AI systems and LLM models that work on a system of tokens, which is you have input tokens and output tokens, and they kind of transact back and forth. And if different ones that depend on your subscription status, that you get capped on them based on the allowance that you have or what have you. But we also have another technology in all this in what is Web3 and tokenization of currency and assets. And I believe what you're going to see is one of the massive impact avenues that you're going to see a lot of this technology take on is the blockchain adoption and tokenized asset structures that will essentially breed systems of economics that are primarily developed around the entrepreneurship and those who are working in entrepreneurial aspects and the investors and the investment elements of all these technologies. And if your work is within a computer, or it's just general knowledge work and you're clicking a mouse away to get your work done, these aren't going to be jobs that humans take on anymore. And I really believe that there's a lot of doom and gloom around where the AI is and robotic systems are going in the near future, in terms of where much like people would say about if their job is taken away, what's their biggest concern? That their money, their minds float naturally to the money aspect of things, but just like the deeper psychology show that people want to be part of a system that's bigger than them, on the economic scales and the work and workflow aspects of organizational structures, you're going to see it's very much similar to what the psychology shows, in that if people hold equity and ownership in there, they're going to feel quite excited to wake up each day and to get to work. And those that are kind of just putting the focus on the monetary senses and scales of things, they're going to um, be living quite a world of chaos and uh, dysregulation, I guess you could say, in the way their common days and life go, on a really a scale that is it's really quite scary to me to think of what happens if we take that kind of way with it. Um, so there's a bit of a general concept of why agency is existing in the structure it is. Um, my call to action is starting off in essentially what is this live stream platform, and it's going to grow little by little. You're going to see it adapt to a bit of systems building that are more of the practice scales of things. And um, it's my philosophy, in a large sense, that I call it the PhD principle, but you end up with your practices, that if you keep practicing your practices and you keep showing up for yourself each day, that starts to turn into habits. You keep practicing your habits each day, and eventually that turns into your disciplines. And then your disciplines, you keep practicing them each day and showing up for yourself. And that's where your whole life changes and kind of escalates and blooms. So I'm going to start moving into a 3 day a week platform, but this is going to be probably about 1 month from now. And it's going to be structured in a sense to where these Friday Q&AI sessions are going to be more collective, where we're hanging out and talking about what we're building together. And of course, like I said, how we can hold equitable structures and share in these builds. And then I'm thinking the other 2 days are going to be, uh, one day might be more news and just general events in these worlds of AI and tech spaces. And um, yeah, I'm thinking maybe another day, maybe having like highlights of what people are building. But yeah, so that's the call to action for the short term futures for my side of it. And from your side of it, I would say that the call to actions, what I'm hoping people start to do is realize that you can um, live the world of abundance if you see fit for yourself. And it's not going to have to take it on all aspects of building to a degree where you have to, just sacrifice your whole life just to keep a business afloat while these big players just eat you up and you're trying to just keep your head above water. Uh, we're in it together. I believe if the power comes in numbers on these things, and if you want to own what you are doing and working in life, then you really just need to keep showing up for yourself and believe in yourself. And I I guess that would be about it. I hope to see you on the next one, and keep on learning, keep on burning, the, making it happen. And remember, if you can see it and you believe it, then you can achieve it. And that will wrap up Friday's Q&AI. So a little more Q on yourself and apply a little more amplified intelligence from those questions, and comment away. If you have any questions, I'm always here and you know where to reach me. Peace.